Hi, I'm Jennifer Sir. Welcome to the Sewing Room and our Business and Fashion series. Today, we're speaking with Ryan Amore of Ryan Amore Inc. Ryan is a Vancouver-based celebrity fashion designer with expertise in pattern engineering and grading. He specializes in women's evening dress wear, occasion wear, athletic wear, and high fashion. After graduating from the Ryerson School of Fashion, Ryan has been blessed to have worked in many positions, fluidly flowing and always taking on a challenge. Working as head designer, senior pattern engineer, technical designer, and sketcher, pattern grader, and product development coordinator has provided him with many outlets to learn, test himself, and evolve his sensibility and skill. Ryan Amore has had the pleasure of working with many global brands such as Aritzia, Calvin Klein, Canada Goose, Le Chateau, and Joe Fresh, with many high-end clients such as Christian Dior and Zac Posen. Without further ado, here is my conversation with Ryan. Welcome to the Sewing Room, Ryan. Thanks for being here.
No, thank you so much for having me.
Can you tell us a little bit about your background and why you started your company?
Yeah, actually, that's quite a long story. So I went to Ryerson University, which I believe now is Toronto Metropolitan University. They switched their names in Toronto, Canada. And pre-education in fashion design, I was kind of deciding which direction I wanted to go down. I was very creative as a child. I loved drawing, loved the whole artsy realm. But I also had a very analytical mind. So I was like, what do I want to go into? And I was thinking anthropology or fashion design. And it was two completely opposite backgrounds. But what honestly drew me to fashion design was more so the creative aspect. But once I found out that there was a technical realm into it that most people don't take advantage of or go down, I was like, that's the path I want to go down. So with myself, I went down the path of technical development to design, which is more fit pattern grading expertise, I guess you would call it. And that's kind of how I started Ryan Amore Inc. I went to fashion design school. I did 4 years of that. And then from there, I started working for corporate companies across Canada. So back in the day with Sears Canada, their division, and I was working there as their tech person and their product developer, gaining a lot of experience in kind of like the global manufacturing realm. From there, I moved and worked for a bunch of companies in the States, worked for Le Chateau when it was a thing back in the day in Canada. So a lot of pattern making and I guess grading and marker making experience, kind of what led me to develop Ryan Amore Inc. But most of my experience has been in the fashion realm. I really enjoy the analytical aspect of it, which drew me to the technical side of it. But I also have a very creative mind. I love drawing, I love creations, I love expression, expression of my will, I guess you would call it, is I really love seeing where my creative mind goes. And pattern making is one of those realms where it kind of bridges the creative and the analytical because you're taking something from a designer and you have to interpret that. And that's what university taught me is how to kind of train your mindset from looking at something 2D into a 3D. But yeah, that's kind of like where it all started was, gosh, I don't know, 12, 13 years ago. So yeah.
And what are the services that your company offers currently?
Yeah, so it's quite vast. So Ryan Amore Inc. started off as just myself. I've worked for about 12 corporate companies to date. And not job hopping, not any of that sort of mindset. Early on, when I graduated, I noticed a niche in the market. And that niche was more so short term development help. I wasn't applying for full-time positions. I wasn't applying for the longevity within companies. I was noticing that a lot of corporate companies and smaller scale companies that were trying to scale up their company were looking for a type of person that could come in for 6 to 8 months, do a lot of hardcore work, develop a lot of things for them they don't have, train their staff, bring them to fruition with their partners, create technical manuals, and hire people was the biggest thing. Was trying to find skilled workers So out of university, I started growing myself in terms of the technical aspect. So I would work for companies, training myself, learning, kind of being a sponge. And then about 6 years ago, I started Ryan Amore Inc., which was myself outsourcing myself to corporate companies in terms of help. So that would be technical management. So I would come in and manage their technical teams that need to level up their experience and how they're doing things. It could be developing technical manuals, grading standards, going overseas to their vendors and onboarding new vendors, training their vendors on how to properly do things to their specific sets, grading patterns, markers, the whole gamut, I guess you would call it. And then about 5 years ago is when I expanded my company into an LLC, which allowed me to hire more people. So I have a staff of 6, and we work currently with about 50 corporate companies globally. Most, I'm sure people would recognize, but we do a lot of apparel management, I guess you would call it. So they would hand us sometimes 20 to 30 styles in a year. They're like, you manage these with our design team. You act as if you're a separate entity, but come in and help us to get our SKU count in order. And what I mean by that is sometimes companies have a lot of stuff they're producing, and their staff just do not have the time to be able to fulfill that. So we're hired to kind of fulfill those roles, from doing the technical sketches all the way to the pattern development, to the tech packs, to PLM, to Gerber, the whole gamut we do. And we even take on small clients sometimes. We're very particular about that. So usually when we hire small clients, we ask for a proposal to see what they're proposing to do, to make sure, one, the money's there, two, they have a full fruition of the understanding of what market they're getting into. And then we take on small clients sometimes, and we help develop their brands, train them up, grow their companies, and kind of see where they go from there.
That's fabulous. What a great service that is. That's amazing.
It's a lot of hard work, I will say, but once you kind of grow yourself, it kind of grows into something. Like, it's
having worked as a technical designer and being both an employee and a freelancer, knowing that I had plenty of work as a freelancer,
right?
because they really needed extra help. So that was, there's a lot of need for what you're offering. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, I will say, like, it's challenging as a person to get into it as a freelancer in corporate, because I find corporate companies are very particular about whom they hire. They're not just like, oh, we need somebody, we're going to hire anybody. Like, they're very particular. It took me a lot of trial and error sometimes, even though I don't like using trial and error, to try to see what companies can fit with me, how I can best service those companies. And in most cases, it involved me creating a portfolio or a proposal of how I will positively impact their company. And kind of sell myself and my skills and show them what they need. And then it kind of bridge those partnerships together, which I find is quite interesting.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing, actually.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the Pattern Design Lab and how that works?
Yeah, so the Pattern Design Lab was a division that I opened up, I want to say about 2.5-3 years ago. And it was kind of a necessity. It was born out of the necessity of how we were running our company. So the biggest problem we were getting into was when a lot of our clients that we were onboarding at the time had no blocks, no idea what a block was or what it looked like and what the fit to that was. And of course, we could do a technical sketch. We could go through the whole process of doing a tech pack and creating it for them. But we found that the similarity between certain clients and certain markets were same. And what I mean by that was we had, at the time, 4 or 5 athletic clients. And they're all wanting just a very basic athletic bottom. They wanted a legging, they wanted a short, they wanted a bra, and they didn't want anything too complex, is because they wanted something to start from for their vendors to use as a block that was well balanced. They had all the specs to it. They had all the images and what have you to send to the factory to actually start doing development. And what most people don't realize is there's 2 forms of development. There's vendor-facing development, and then there's internal development. So most of these clients want to build relationships with partners. And with that, they want to limit how much money they spend. So they do vendor facing development, which means the vendor does all the pattern correction, the vendor does all the pattern work, but you have somebody on the tech side who, I guess, guides them down that process, shows them what to do correctly. They hand in something and like, change it this way, and they show them how to change it. Instead of everything done internally, they're training their vendors to do that externally. So we found that we needed to create something that allowed our clients to just download what they needed without us doing a lot of the work because it was always the same work over and over again. And I was like, I don't want to keep making the same pant 6, 7 times. So I spent the better part of a year creating about 40 blocks that kind of characterize the most of our capital that we capitalize on in terms of our income, that most of our junior clients are looking for. Not our senior ones like our corporate clients, and I mean corporate like Aritzia or Lulu. I mostly mean juniors that are, have a staff between 5 to 20, have a revenue basis of 500 to like 1.2 million a year, and are looking to scale this stuff up. So I created a website that allowed clients to just go on. They pay a fee every month to use it, and they can download what they need when they need, and it has full production rights to it. So they sign an agreement, and it allows them just to go in, and every 6 months I update it. But they're fully graded patterns that are compatible with pattern systems. Instead of it being something that you would get off of Etsy that's more so Illustrator based, you can download and smash the patterns together and print them out. This is just one file type that the factory can open. So we offer it in Gerber, we offer it in Lectra, we offer it in Optitex, and we offer it in DXF, so standard DXF, and then ASTM DXF it's graded. So it gave our clients more variety. When they're looking for a vendor to onboard, they can download these assets, send it to them, sew up a test sample if they wanted, see if that vendor fits, or they can download the 4 or 5 assets they need. Like, hey, here are the blocks we're going to start from for these styles. Here are the tech packs, and here you go. So it really allowed us to diversify our income, which is, a great business strategy, but also to allow our clients to have more available to them without having to soak in a huge amount of money to develop each of these assets. And that's kind of what lended to the Pattern Design Lab. We partner with schools with it even. So like, we give codes to Ryerson for students to download for free that they can use for their school and development. So it's like a good learning kind of partnership, and everything's done in Clo. So it has a Clo image with it. So the vendor and the company downloading it knows what they're downloading. And then our hope in the future is to apply tech packs to it that are specific to each of those styles. Right now, it's just the CAD files with the Clo images, but maybe in the future, we'll incorporate a basic tech pack to that. But that's something that I haven't really thought of in terms of a project quite yet, because it's quite extensive. So yeah.
Have you ever worked with independent pattern companies who need help with grading and doing their like instruction booklets and things like that?
Yeah, so locally and primarily in Canada and the States is most of my business. We have some in Europe, so like in France and in England. But especially locally in Vancouver, a lot of the local factories or a lot of the local companies that kind of do what I do outsource to me. So like, hey, we have 4 or 5 clients, we can't do this, or we just don't have the expertise to do this something that's specific. Can you take it on and help us? So like, we do partner with certain individuals like that. What makes myself different from a lot of my competitors, I guess you would call, is I hold my company to a corporate standard. And what I mean by that is my company acts as if you were to work in the corporate world. We're structured the same. We use PLM systems, we use Gerber, we use 3D and Clo and AccuMark. So we're kind of tailored to a very robust, quick time frame, which a lot of the local production isn't. They're just used to doing a pattern here and there. They're not doing a full gamut spectrum. So when clients are looking for that and they go to them instead, usually it's outsourced to myself. So we kind of create those local partnerships that way. A lot of local factories come to us when they have clients that don't have any assets to bring, and they're like, hey, we have this client, we can't do this because we're so busy, but can you do it instead? And then I partner with them. We kind of do that kind of development phase throughout the proto ones to bulk, and we do the markers and the grading and all that kind of stuff.
You're speaking the language, definitely.
Right? It's like you kind of, you don't want to like pigeonhole yourself, even though you have competitors and it's something that you want to, of course, shine in your own right. But it is in this day and age, especially post COVID, it's like you really have to learn to partner and learn to like take the ego out of what you do and just work with people. Offer the services you can, partnering with the people you can, because that in itself grows your own community. And that's what helped grow my own business. Like I started this company, technically I started it 10 years ago, but when I started it 6 years ago as an LLC, I was small. I was just myself. And then over the years, it's just who you work with makes a massive difference. And that's what grew our companies, because one person worked with us at one company, then this other corporate company reaches out, hey, we heard this great thing from Janet over at Sport, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, great. And then it leads to another client. And then it kind of like, speedballs itself, because you're kind of creating an environment to allow that energy to come in.
Right.
And that's what we find is awesome. Word of mouth.
Word of mouth is amazing. That's the best way to get.
I know, right? It's so great to scale a business. Yeah.
What do you consider your signature offer?
Our signature offer, I would honestly say our signature offer would be our 3D incorporation into our design phase. We find that a lot of our clients, especially post-COVID, pre-COVID, it was very difficult, but post-COVID, clients are extremely open to 3D development. And the market is heavily shifting toward 3D in a VR world type essence into apparel design. A lot of companies have started to adopt 3D design. So if that's Chloe, if that's Optitex, if that's like Gerber 3D, if it's Marvelous Designer, like there's a whole bunch of 3D softwares out there. But for us, we do, no matter what we do, everything is done in Chloe first. So it's like we want to cross-check all of our patterns. We want to see those stress maps. We want to see the strain on the fabrics. And we want to see like what we're going to be receiving. And it's such a delight, I guess you would call it, because for myself, 10 years ago, 3D was such a new thing. Like Lectra has had a 3D element to their software for years, like decades, but it was never great. It's like just allowed you like a really basic visual. In this day and age, you can heavily play with it where you can really create something a one-to-one. We have a partnership with Chloe where because we're a business, so we have a business license with them that allows us to render our fabrics one-to-one. So if a client gives us their fabrics, we send it to Chloe and they actually create a fabric for us that's exactly the same, with the exact same properties as that fabric, to allow us then to do a one-to-one ratio in Chloe. Which most people don't realize that you can do. You can do it yourself. It just takes a lot of time and a lot of measuring. But once you have all those assets, it allows our clients to play around and really see what they're getting into. It definitely speeds up our development time with our vendors and factories, because we can send them those 3D Chloe files. And a lot of our vendors use Chloe now. Like actually will send us a Chloe file back. So before we even send a tech pack to them, we would send them the Chloe file. Like, this is what we want to do. Then from that, we build our tech packs from those 3D elements to then send to them once costing is approved, fabric has been nominated, and all that kind of stuff. So I guess that would be our core offering that we provide our services for. We've been training a lot of corporate companies in the 3D space, which is something that I'm really excited about, to allow those individuals within those companies to learn 3D design and development. We've created blocks for companies that are solely based in Chloe, so the design team can take their core styles every season and start playing around with colors and fabrics to speed up the process with the internal development. And it's just fun.
Can you tell us a little bit more what you mean by 3D development? So it's been a while since I've been in corporate.
Yeah.
And I'm a total hands-on pattern maker, and do everything on paper still. So
I love that. We do too.
But I want to understand a little bit more about what 3D design means, and I'm sort of getting a little bit of a clue what it is.
Yeah.
But can you tell us more?
Yeah. So I'm I wouldn't say I'm against it. I'm just a huge advocate for a true balanced, well thought out pattern before you start developing. Um, a lot of clients I work with start with something that is not as ideal as I guess you would call it, right? It's not balanced. The baselines don't match up. Your front and back are like fighting each other. There's a lot of nuances and patterns that people don't realize. So when we start with 3D, everything is based off of a block or a pattern or style that we have took the time to develop. Most of the time that is off 3D. So we have started that by hand, or we started that by printing the pattern out, like, the old school way. We plot it out on our printer. We check all of our baselines and stuff like that. And the reason why is because I find the handling of the patterns physically provides you with something that 3D doesn't. It really provides you with the full experience of understanding the nuance of how that garment is fitting. Once we're happy with a pattern that we like, either we drape it on our dress form, we plot it out on our pattern, we rebalance it out, we might re-digitize it on our digitizer. Once that pattern has been approved and it's in our system as an approved style that we can proceed to 3D, then we start with flow. And what I mean by 3D is more so we take something that we know fits, and we put it into our virtual space to allow us to see if we change our fabric, if we change our seams, if we change our type of seaming, if we add any nuances to it, like seam taping, fusing. And by allowing us to put that into a 3D space, it allows us an instant visual of seeing how this fit will affect that implication of adding in those nuances to that garment. It also allows us the opportunity to start redesigning this block. So you can take this block and start adding seams, changing fullness, doing whatever you need to. And it provides you with a step-by-step process of allowing you to see where you started from to where you came from. But it also allows you with more play because you can really start implementing all these different changes and having an instant visual and accurate representation of what it is. However, it took us about a year to get our library up in order where all of our fabrics we use are there, all of our types of fusing is in there, all of our trims and notions are in there. So we're getting a true one-to-one relationship. Flow itself offers some fantastic base fabrics that you can use, base trims that you can add in, some YKK stuff, which is fantastic for those that just want to play around with it and kind of figure out what 3D is. It's a fantastic training. But when you get into something like ourselves, where we deal with specifics of fabrics, very specifics of types of fusing, we then have to make sure that that is in 100% representation within Flow, because or else doing 3D doesn't really go much further because you're not getting that one-to-one if you're using a substitute fabric, right? Because you're not getting that accuracy that you're looking for. So for us, it really allows us that space because we have our library set up with our thousands of fabrics that we have in our systems, all of our different types of fusings from PCC that we use, all of our trims and notions, all of our different like elastics and Mobilon tapes, all those are added in there. So for us, it's really quick. We can go in and take a trouser block and be like, okay, we're going to make this a trouser block with a side seam panel, and we're going to add in a front fly closure. We're going to add in an inseam gusset that's 2 inches to the knee. And we're able to do that, either create that pattern in Gerber and then put it into Clo, or we can actually do it within Clo and then export that pattern from Clo and plop it into Gerber and then do our final set within Gerber so our vendors can access it. Because all of our stuff is vendor facing, which I mean, vendors can access our Gerber SQL database or access our PLN system, and everything speaks together. So that's kind of 3D in a nutshell.
When you say 3D, and it shows up visually on a body, and is the body like your standard fit model?
Yes. So we have purchased all of our forms here in the studio are from Alvanon. So we use their fit forms, and that usually has a great one-to-one relationship with our market. It took us some time to figure out what specific Alvedon form we want. We got custom forms, so we kind of fixed some measurements that fix the balance for like a North American market and like a South American market and like an East Asian market. But from our form specifically, we then purchased a full size set that allows us to have a full size set virtually from extra, extra small or a size 00 all the way up to a size 24 for women's, or a size 28 all the way up to, I think it's a 52 for men. So we can work in any base size, which is also the fantastic thing about Clo 3D is our base sizes in studio is a size 38 and 40 for men's, or a size 4 or size 8 for women's. But if a client came to us and wanted something in a size 12, we don't have the physical form, but we have the virtual form to allow us to do that. And because most of our assets are already pre-developed for these specific forms, it relates to each other very well. So we're able to take on those clients and do that development. And Alvedon has fantastic forms that allows you to really see the one-to-one from their forms with the exact same parameters in Clo, which is honestly like a pattern maker's dream. It's like
so are they digitized? Are the forms digitized somehow in the 3D? How does that? I'm like all about.
Yeah, it's so cool, right?
Yeah,
No, so cool. It's I guess you would say it's a 3D body. So take like if you were to look at a form in the studio and walked around it, they would have that exact same form with feet, head, and arms like attached to it. And you can move the arms up and down. You can like move the torso. You can like move the head, all in that 3D space. So it allows you 3D to do exactly what you would do in studio. Turning the mannequin around, you can zoom in and out. You can play with what they call arrangement points, which allows you to adjust different alignments with your arm. So you can like push your arm in and out. You can have it going up and down. So you can check like the rotation of garments. You can check like the scope of how far something is coming out. So even though your form in studio is hard on a mannequin stand and it's more physical, in the 3D space, it allows you to really play with how that mannequin is kind of working. It kind of works just like a body, right? If you start walking and moving, you can have the mannequin walk and move, right? So you can see how it's going to react if you're using I use that quite heavily with athletic wear. I have you can go in Clo and you can have the mannequin run.
Wow.
Right? And then as you're running, you can turn on the strain maps and you can see where the fabric is going to start to abrade really quickly, right? Because of what the motion of that mannequin is doing in Clo. So I know, oops, that scene's getting red right now while he's running. And it's, if I know it's going to happen for a year while this person wears it over the length of a year, it's going to break within 4 or 5 months. So then we have to kind of refigure out how it's going to be sewn. Do we need to readjust our pattern? Do we need to readjust the fabric in the area to have, a double layer? Maybe we add mesh behind it. Who knows? And that's what allows us in 3D to play with, is we can start adding in all these elements to actually figure all this out without having everything being sewn, waiting 2-3 weeks for the factory to send to us, then waiting a week for us to even get to it because our fit schedule is so packed. And then it takes us 2-3 weeks after that to send. So it's the gamut of time is huge, versus if you do everything in 3D first and you kind of have a really good starting point, you only really need one sample. And then from there you can improve. So that's what I love about the 3D kind of realm. It's just so fascinating. And it took, I've been working with it for about 7 years in Clo. And every 3-4 months, there's updates that come out with things. And I'm like, oh, finally, yes, I can finally do that. It's so great to be able to have that constant development within a system that I'm still learning, right? Even after 7 years, there's still new things that are coming out that I have to learn, right? So that's what I kind of love about it.
That's amazing. That's
yeah,
really
it's so much fun. The one thing I could tell anybody is learn 3D.
You're in 3D. Yeah.
Yeah, it's such an awesome way of visualizing your creations. Because some people don't have that skill or that mindset to visualize a 2D to a 3D, right? They see something on paper, They're like, oh, I drafted it this way, it's going to fit great. And then you put on a body and they're like, ooh, like they don't have that, they haven't trained that skill yet to get them to think visually on a body 3D, which is why model fitting is much harder usually than just fitting something flat on a paper and balancing it, right? Because you have a 3D body to actually have to contour around with the fabric, with the tension, with all the seaming.
Yeah, with the movement,
with the movement, and then you don't know if that model that day is bloated. You don't know if that model is under spec. There's a whole lot that you kind of have to work around when you do on a live model, which is why doing 3D allows you the same visibility as if you're fitting on a model, but something that's more stationary. So you have a one-to-one to always relate to. And then once the sample comes in, we then put it on our fit model to triple confirm, okay, it worked on our flat form, so our form in studio. It worked on our clo. Now let's see if it's going to work on our model and see what our model says, because I want to know what that person is thinking. Like I want to know if they think it's too tight, if they think it's too uncomfortable, if they think it's this. And that's what clo or any 3D software can't tell you right now. You can visualize it if it's straining too much or if it's too tight, but you don't know if that comfortable aspect is there, which is why like, a model is still needed always, because you still need to reference it. So
absolutely. So what does a typical day look like for you?
oh, it varies so much. I guess the standard would be I'm usually here in my studio about 7 o'clock in the morning. Go through all my emails from the vendors first. That's the first thing I like to touch, is making sure that all my vendors are taken care of. And then if there's anything that requires further attention from that vendor, then I don't send those emails till later on the day till about 2, just to ensure that those are the things that we cover and get off our plates. If the vendor has questions, if there's any grading problems, spec issues, if they don't know how to construct something, we take about two-ish hours to go through that. Then we have an internal system. So we use Gerber PLM and Centric internally for all of our tech packs, all of our management, fabric management, timelines and whatnot. But we have a development system that allows us to create a tracking system that provides us with a full gamut of what's on our roster now, what is due at the end of the week, what's upcoming. So we want to make sure that we reference these tables or these documents and update them daily. If a vendor emails us and says, hey, this sample isn't going to come in till 2 weeks, then we go and we update this tracker to make sure that everything we do is live and we have all the accurate information for development. And it really helps cross-functionally, especially when we work with corporate clients. There's a whole lot of detail that we need to provide to them. So allowing us to have everything in one document, and it's just tracked by style from like sourcing all the way to bulk, and has every single stage and everything has a date with it. It allows us to keep track of when stuff is done and when it's approved, just for cross-checking purposes. Once that's done, then we actually get into our work. So we have all of our client work we have to do. We have all of our internal stuff that we have to finish. So we go through our tech packs, pattern making, drafting if we have to, clo in the afternoon. And then before the day, we just recheck all of those cross-functional documents, making sure everything is up to date. Anything that we need clarification on, we'll ask our clients, and we kind of just go from there.
Wow. So that's a lot. That's a big day.
Yeah, every day is like that. It's just like you want to make sure you have everything checked, because the last thing I want is a client coming to me and being like, hey, why was this missed? And you're like, I don't know. And I don't know when it was done. I don't know who approved it. So in our tracking system, we know, okay, style MS1001, when did Proto 2 come in? Oh, it came in last week on the Thursday. Okay. And then we didn't touch it for a fitting until the Monday. And then we didn't approve comments until the Wednesday. And then they weren't sent to the factory until Friday. So it gives us an idea of like the actual time that we're spending on each garment. And it's just, we found early on that if we didn't have something like that, we're lost. We're like, I don't know. I don't want to write everything down on paper. I want it in one place.
That's great. Which tracking system do you use?
So we tried the Gerber version that allows you to have a calendar in it, and we can implement important dates, which we do. But we actually just created it in Excel. It's a like macroed, populated, massive table with linked files. And I found that's just the most easiest for now, because there isn't anything that is out there that truly affects what we need to have done. And if there is something, it requires like $60,000-$70,000 to customize it. And I'm just like, not about that. We'll create our own, thank you.
When you were starting out, what kind of help did you seek out from outside?
Oh gosh. When I started, I personally had no help to start. It was all just myself and my intuition of going what I wanted to do. I noticed that I wasn't a career person. Earlier on, I wasn't the person that could work at a company for 6-7 years. That's just not how I'm built. I'm very expressive. I want to keep climbing myself and seeing where I go. So I sought out just people that I thought would lend very well to my path that I wanted to go down. So early on, it would just be like cold emailing people, being like, hey, you're such an inspiration. I see that you're doing X, Y, and Z. Like, I know you're probably super busy, but is there any way you can spare 10 minutes just to talk and see how I can get there and what I can do? Of course, there's people who don't answer, but there are some few that were like fantastic that allowed me to talk to them and just bounce ideas and see like that mentorship that I guess people don't really have, and I didn't have at the time. Like, there wasn't any mentorship or help I was getting, but from reaching out to these individuals, LinkedIn at the time was new. Like, it wasn't anything crazy like it is today. Like, I feel like it's such like a social media platform, but back in the day, it was just like a resume place. So like, I was just looking at where people came from, how long they've been there. And then like if they left, I would email them. If they're still there, I would still reach out over LinkedIn and be like, hey, I would love to talk about some questions. And like some people were fantastic to go through that. And a lot of it honestly was just self-learning. There's only so much you can get from individuals and like seeing what their career path was and what they went down, but it's never going to be the same. Like I could talk to 1,000 people and they could tell me all different things of how they got there, but it's like my path is going to be very different from theirs because my intuition and my priorities is going to be different from someone else's. So I just took what these individuals told me and I'm like, how can I apply this to my own path? And like, what do I want? What do I want to get out of my work that I'm putting in? Like the energy that I'm putting into building all of this, like, what do I want to achieve from it? What do I want to come out of it? And from that is kind of what built what I had today. It did not happen overnight. It took, so many years to create, but those decisions helped me grow and scale what I've created today. And certain individuals that I worked with in the industry were key aspects to that because sometimes you don't have the perspective to see certain things that might be right in front of you. Right. And these individuals will just tell you sometimes flat out, like, hey, like, do this, like, you clearly can do it. And it's like, oh, I'm a little scared. I don't want to do that. And it's like, just try it, do it. And then once you do it, it's like,
and
you wish you'd done it before. You're like, why did I wait? Yeah.
Do you have any advice for makers looking to start their own brand?
Yes. Know what you want.
What you want.
I think the biggest issue that we have as a technical development or production company is a lot of our clients don't understand the process. So they don't understand what entails into the creation aspect, how much money it involves, what they need to get out of it, what assets they need. And like, there's not a whole lot of research. If you want to create your own line, it's like take the time before you even start thinking about what you want to educate yourself into the process and what you're getting into. We can definitely take the time, and we have done this when people would just want us to hire us just to educate them for 3-4 hours, just tell them the process and go through it one-to-one. But that involves a lot of money. So it's great for individuals just to have a basic understanding of this isn't going to happen overnight. It's probably going to take 6 to 9 months. It's probably going to take X amount of dollars. And make sure you cost your stuff with your development included, which a lot of clients don't. They're like, oh, I want it under $25. And I'm like, but you spent 80 grand developing this 30 look collection. It's like, you need to soak in that cost somewhere. And it's like, that kind of training is what's great to understand, is learning the process, but also just knowing what you want. We've had clients come in that bounce back and forth and back and forth. Well, this company's doing this and this company's doing that, and they chose to do this instead of this, so I want to do that. And I'm like, okay, but you don't know what you want then. Like, you're bouncing around basing your decision off of others. It's great to know the market, and it's great to know where your competitors are at. But if you know a niche and you know that this is something you have a passion for and want to get into, do that, because you're going to end up hating it in 6 to 9 months. Like anything I do, I'm like, oh, I love it in the beginning, this is fantastic. And then at the end of it, I'm like, I just want it over. I want to go on to the next collection. I was like, I'm done. So just make sure it's something that you have a passion for, but also know that you've done your research for that specific market. We've had some fantastic clients wanting to get into the petite realm, and there's not a whole lot of petite clothing brands out there. We've had some clients go out into a full size set range, which there isn't a whole lot of clients doing sizes above extra large. Like, there isn't markets for that. Or should I say, there is markets for that, but there isn't companies really doing that. So those are fantastic markets for individuals wanting to get into. Ethnically diverse markets is even more amazing. Markets for who are targeting age groups above 50 is even more amazing. Like, there's so much out there that people don't realize that the fashion industry only caters to like 10% of like the actual market.
Right.
You go into like an Aritzia, you go into a Zara, you go into a Lulu, they're like marketing a very niche 5%, 10% of what the actual market needs, right? But you think, how are these companies so big? Because they're only targeting these like specific markets. So these markets always shop there. But if you created something that tailored to a market that was a full size set range that truly has awesome fit for those from extra large to a 6X, you'll have the same market share that Lulu would have. And people might disagree with that. But in my experience, I've seen companies flourish because of that, because they've had a very strong direction. They knew what they wanted. They had very strong principles. And that's what made them successful. Just knowing what you want and kind of sticking by it. Because there have been instances where, companies, go up and down. There's ebbs and flows with everything. And those that stick by their product and really try to redevelop something and innovate, I think is the most important part, is innovation with what you're doing. Understanding what that market wants, understanding how that innovation will lead to the impact of that market, and seeing what that change could be. Is probably the most important. I've told clients this hundreds of times. It's like, some listen to it, some don't. And those that don't listen, 9 times out of 10 always seem to go down a certain path. But those that do seem to really understand and take that to heart. So, yeah.
And what's the best way for other designers to work with you? How should they reach out?
Oh, for myself, the best way is honestly just send our studio an email. We do a lot of like internship placements to fulfill hours. We try our best to help where we can. We've had some awesome students, some international students, just want to talk and go through things, and like, we're happy to do that. Of course, within like a certain time parameters, but usually it's just send us an email if you have questions, or there's something that you desperately want or need. Like, we can try our best to help where we can, because I was there 15 years ago, having no clue where to go, what to do. This industry is so big, and it's like, who do I talk to? Where do I go? And I wish at the time I had someone like myself who I could just talk to and like understand the impact, and understand the progress that I would be going down, and understanding the trajectory of where I'd be going. And sometimes just talking to somebody really helps. Just fleshing out those thoughts and ideas that you have.
Yeah, the informational interview.
Honestly, and like, it's something that I feel like we don't get enough of, is just talking through what you're doing. Um, there's been instances when I was younger, growing myself, not knowing. Like, I remember back in the day, this is like so silly, but we all had those pattern making textbooks that we held as like a Bible, and we're like, oh, we have to do it this way. And it's something that, we can't, no, the book says this, so I can't, it has to be like that. And that's the mindset I had when I left school, because that's kind of what you get taught. It's like, well, it's shown here and this is what you should do. And it took me some education in myself and trust in my abilities to learn that there's 1,000 ways to do things. Like, just because someone put it in a book one specific way, it doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It just means there could be other alternatives that might better suit how you work, that get you the exact same results in the same mindset, just not the same way that this person has chosen to do it. Now I don't even reference textbooks. I don't even reference like pattern books. Like, you kind of just go based off intuition and based off experience, and that what leads you to that creation and that new mindset. So it's like, at the time, I wish I had someone that told me, was like, don't take it to heart. Like, make yourself open to the industry, to the world, and like just take in that knowledge, and don't try to hold yourself or pigeonhole yourself, because I feel like that's what hindered me in my early stages. Well, that was just very like, Armstrong had it this way in this textbook, so I have to have it this way. And I was like, no, there's other alternatives.
Yeah, I learned that from all the different pattern makers I worked with at Gap, who just did things
Right?
different ways. I mean, that's also another way to learn, is just to be on the job, and but
Honestly,
being open to how other people do things is terrific advice.
it really is. And trust me, I worked, and I think I'm a very specific and unique individual where I have had the luxury of working with corporate clients, which most people don't. Most people work with small businesses, but I worked with global clients, and I've had the luxury of working with these pattern teams. And the biggest thing that I see when I either manage them, I'm like a director of a team for a year, or I'm just, a senior pattern maker for them for a year, is certain individuals are just so gridlocked into their way of doing things. Well, this is so wrong to me. I don't agree with this. And it's just like very cutthroat of not having an open set to it, because just because you've done it for 10, 20 years, it might still be working, but there's other, new information that's coming in, like 3D's coming in, and there's a whole new way of doing things with that will show you different ways of pattern making that you might have not learned from a textbook from the 80s, 90s, or 2000s. Like, there's so much newness that's coming in, and I've seen people fail because of that, not move on in their career, because they're just so strained to one very specific, they had like horse blinders on, where it's like, nope, this is how I've done it, this is how I'm doing it. And it's like, great, if that's what suits you, awesome. But in order to move forward, it's like we all need to have that mindset where we can just absorb constant information and just be open to the newness. I was working with one of my atelier clients in Paris. So I used to do like high-end evening. Was one of my I loved it. It was fantastic. I still do it, but one of my high-end clients in Paris, I flew down like 2 years ago before the pandemic, and I drafted this awesome ball gown pattern. It looked great, awesome. I was just so proud of it. It had like 6 layers to it. The patterns were massive. Like, the pattern maker came to me, and she was in the industry for like 70 years. Like, she's like this fantastic like library of information, because she's worked at like all these French ateliers, all these massive Parisian brands. And she was like, what you did was awesome. But she's like, I want to show you something that's going to like half your time. And she showed me how to do this draping technique that isn't in a textbook, isn't in anywhere. And I learned how to do it. And I was like, oh my God, like, this is fantastic. Like, I would never have known this unless I like was open to receiving this knowledge. Right. And like, that's the excitement of the industry, is like just receivership of that. Though there will be people that don't like to share information. There are very people who gatekeep. But as someone who's starting out, be a sponge. Go through your dues. You might think, oh, I'm just an assistant, I'm just looking at this and doing a sketch here. Do it. because at the end of the day, it's like you're at least in the industry, you're growing into something and you're learning either how to do things or how not to do things, right? Like that's how I learned, right? Maybe I won't do it that way moving forward. Yeah.
Well, Ryan, thank you so much for taking the time this morning. This has been really fabulous.
Oh, it's so much fun. I love talking. As I'm just like a talking bug, but yeah, if anyone ever has any questions, like just reach our studio at ryanamoredesign.com, and that's, you know, we're happy to answer any questions you need. But such a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been great. I'll link up everything in the show notes.
Awesome. Perfect.
Okay. And I'll share the video with you when it's live.
Super exciting.
Well, have a great day, Ryan.
You as well. And so great meeting you. Hope to talk soon again.
Okay, me too.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Ryan and his insights on the technical aspects of making fashion, along with the new 3D technologies available in the fashion industry. I've linked his website in our show notes below. For more information about our fashion studies program at the Sewing Room, visit our website at thesewingroomalameda.com/fashion-studies, all lowercase. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up and hit subscribe. It really, really helps us out.